now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar tonight. I am not Shem Kendrick. I'm Cale Royer. I'm the tree stuff technical wizard, which it makes it sound like I know what I'm doing, when in fact I'm usually just making it up off the top of my head most of the time. So we've got a great webinar coming at you today. Little tiny trees. We're going to learn all about them, how to grow them, how to plant them, how to make a cool little diorama, make a forest out of them. It's really cool. It's really neat. You can check out Shem's Instagram. He's got a lot of pictures of his bonsai there. It's Rigaman. I think that is there an underscore in between that? Yeah, RIGGA_MAN. So check that out. It's really cool. But don't go away right now. At the end of this webinar, we will have a quiz that you can take. I'll post it in the comments. I'll post it on the front page of our Facebook page. It'll be on the YouTube comments, the description area for the video. You can take the quiz to earn 2 free CEUs at the end. A day after this airs, it's only going to be worth 1, but you can do it whenever you want. They'll live on Facebook and YouTube eternally. So hopefully that keeps everybody from asking me those questions while we're in here. Also, if any shady links start popping up in the Facebook chats, ignore them. Anything that is like, hey, come click on this and we'll to watch the webinar, you're already watching it. Don't click on that. They'll ask you for a credit card number, then you'll have to get a new credit card. And that's also why if your comments aren't showing, if it's not letting you show up, I've had to do some restrictions on the comments. So if you're not following the page, I think you're not going to be allowed to comment. So just go ahead and like Tree Stuff on Facebook. That's how I got away from that, because it got pretty crazy. Couple notes. I've got right here, before we get started, the Jason Dudek party, the new Tree Stuff party, first one that we're going to have in a year. It is currently slated for, I think, sometime in March. We've got a new date. It's May 8th. I am going to be updating everything about that new date on the Facebook events page and on treestuff.com/webinars. It's been a year, or maybe a little bit more, since we've done a Tree Stuff party. I'm still tracking down one of the boxes of all the gear, so I will find it. I will have stuff. There will be cool things there for people to try out. It's going to be a lot of fun. It always is. Next thing up is going to be the Modern Chainsaw webinar that we have coming up May 8th. That's Craig Bachman. As kind of a thing afterwards, it's kind of a sequel to the last Modern Chainsaw training that we did with Tim Ard. He talked a lot about felling trees and getting your kerf right and all sorts of technical stuff. Craig's actually going to be going out and chopping stuff down and showing actually out in the field doing that. After that, sometime in May, we don't have a date yet because it's hard to nail Kevin Bingham down on something because he's such a busy guy. Kevin Bingham's doing another SRT webinar. It's a lot of fun. If you don't know who Kevin Bingham is, he essentially created SRT. And the rope runner, the rope wrench, the rope runner pro, he's had his hand in all of that. Hans Carson is not here. He decides, I don't know, he doesn't want to do webinars. I don't know. He's lazy. Don't tell anybody I said that. I mean, he's my brother. That's why I can say that. The tree risk assessment qualification webinar that we're doing. Once again, all these webinars, you can get 2 free CEUs. Same thing as this here. Casey Snyder's doing that one on May 6th. Do it. You don't get your qualification at the end of it, but it's kind of like our TreeU certified prep course. He's going to go over what's going to be on that test, what you're going to need to know to be qualified. It's going to be a great resource to get you started on that and to reinforce anything as well. A little bit more off the wall, we're going to have David Anderson for his 3rd webinar on August 19th. He's a bird doctor. Not a bird doctor. He's got his doctorate in birds. He's an ornithologist, and he works with the Peregrine Foundation, mostly with harpy eagles. That's what his last webinar was about. A lot of fun. He's got a lot of cool stories. Canopy Watch is his nonprofit organization where he goes around and teaches people how to climb in mostly in Latin countries. So go check that out. Just canopywatch.com. Cool guy, a lot of fun. I'm not quite sure what he's going to talk about, but it's always really interesting. Our giveaway live streams. We're not really announcing when we're doing those. I don't know if we're going to have one this week, considering it's Thursday. We may have done it on Monday. I literally can't remember. I'm going to have to check it out. If we haven't, we might not be doing it tomorrow, or it might just be me, or I might get Carson to come do it because Nick is currently out on paternity leave because his wife popped out another baby, because apparently one's not enough. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure that you have notifications turned on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook to know when we're going live. Other thing, product review contest is going on right now, where you review products and then you can win money. So we're going to be picking at the end of the contest just some random reviews out there. All you have to do is find things that you've used. Go on a Tree of Stuff and click the write a review, give it some stars. Bada bing, bada boom, you're entered to win. Couldn't be easier. Every time that you enter, put a review in, you're entered to win. We do go through and we do call out reviews that are like 4 stars. Never tried it, but it looks neat. It's got cool colors. So don't. We like to actually add to the arborist community here. So help us out that way. Keep an eye out. There might be one of those sales next week where we do things that's a little bit crazy. So pay attention. All right. I think that is about it. A couple questions here. Not questions, but do giveaways while we're not working in the field. Unfortunately, it's just kind of whenever we can get a time to do it. Nick and I both have babies and don't want to work after work hours usually. So sometimes we're trying to do that. And also, I don't know, we might do one at midnight at some point in time. So it's just, it happens. Keep your phone on you. And you might want to start answering phone calls because you don't win unless you actually pick up the phone and you answer. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Shem Kendrick, and he's going to talk about what everybody has actually come here to learn about. So, Shem, I am bringing it over to you.
Hey guys, my name is Shem Kendrick. I'm based out of Savannah, Georgia, and thank you so much, Tree Stuff, for having me here. I'm really excited to talk about bonsai. And coming out of the gate, I'll tell you I am not a bonsai master, so take the advice I give you with a grain of salt. I have been dabbling in the hobby for some time now, though. So can you hit me with the first slide? Oh, actually, we'll make it the second. All right, so the topics we're going to cover tonight, we got number 1, what is bonsai? Sourcing trees for bonsai. Ramification, we'll dive into what that is. Soil selection, where to place your bonsai. Resources to learn more. And then lastly, I got a surprise for you. We're going to compose a bonsai forest of bald cypress. Pretty stoked about that. My friend Nick Maidenant hit me up a couple months back and asked me if I could put a piece together for him. And I figured what better time than to save it for this event. So we'll do the next slide. All right, so what is bonsai? Bonsai literally translates from Japanese to a tree in a container or a tree in a pot. So your definition can vary largely whether you're a master bonsai practitioner or just a beginner, as far as what level of development actually it would be considered a bonsai. Trees we want to avoid are generally trees with large leaves. As we stunt the growth of a bonsai, the leaves do shrink in size. But say, for instance, you wouldn't want to do a London plane tree because they have rather large leaves, and you're never going to get that leaf size down to where it would be to scale with the size tree that we're developing. To the right, you can see just a few examples of different bonsai styles. These are trees that are generally replicated from mature trees in nature. A lot of these you wouldn't see here, for instance, but there's so many more, and it's important that before you start pruning or before you start developing your tree that you have some sort of style in mind. And there's so many options to choose from, but you don't want to just mindlessly start cutting at a tree with no plan in mind. But the art of bonsai is growing ornamental, artificially dwarfed trees, and we do this by restricting the soil volume, as well as that's the main factor, as well as the aggregate we use for the soil, pruning of roots, and pruning of the shoots. All right, we'll hit the next slide. All right, where do we source trees to get started with bonsai? A great option is to dig them up in the woods. Yamadori makes some great bonsai. Some of the higher priced bonsai trees are actually dug up. A lot of times in the alpine regions, the trees will be dwarfed due to the elevation or other factors such as soil sometimes, low soil volume, etc. But that would make a great option. Also, as tree guys, we have great opportunities on jobs, of course, to dig up trees that would possibly be getting removed. Nursery stock, so just a general garden nursery. That's a great place to look. I would suggest that you look into what you're trying to acquire before you go drop some money at a nursery, because you can't spend a lot of money on something that does not make great material. For instance, when we're looking for bonsai material, you want a tree with an interesting root flare. You don't want inverse taper, which is where too many limbs grow at the same spot in the trunk. Instead of starting from the bottom at a wider taper and then gradually tapering up to the top, you would actually taper down and then back out and so on. So that's undesirable. So look into that. But a regular nursery, they're easy. Everybody has them in their area. And sowing seeds, that's another good option if you're in it for the long haul. I don't do a whole lot of that yet, but just because I have a small backyard in this urban setting I'm in. So I try to keep it filled up with actual larger trees rather than a bunch of seed trays. But a word of advice, don't fall for the bonsai seeds that you find online. There's nothing in particular about those seeds that makes them special. It's kind of a sales gimmick. So you might pay 10 times the price for a seed that's labeled as a bonsai seed, but there's absolutely nothing different about it than a regular seed. Bonsai nursery, obviously, goes without saying. That's a great source. When you're going there, you should be looking to spend a good bit of money. However, if you choose a lot of the trees that are on the main display shelves, like the local nursery here that sells bonsai, a lot of times I'll find stuff under the shelves and it hasn't been placed into a bonsai pot, but it has been developed for years and it's in a low soil volume, and he's already done some preliminary work to it, so I can get these trees for a lot cheaper than I would a bonsai that's more developed. But a bonsai is never finished, so at any stage is great because we can work on those over the years. Another one would be develop trees planted as seedlings over tile in the ground. This is great if you have a tree, for instance, these trees in front of you, these trident maples. They have very slender trunks, which is what I chose for this composition. But suppose I were to want to thicken those trunks and grow that tree and develop it a lot. When we put a tree in any size pot, it stunts the growth, especially in a bonsai container where it's very, very limited soil. But even in a regular size pot, we're going to get growth at 3 to 5 times the rate if we put that that tree in the ground. However, when we take it back out of the ground to put it in a bonsai container that has rather low soil volume, you don't want to be dealing with all those roots that grow down. We just want our root system to be lateral. So placing your tree in the ground over a piece of tile, put the tile about 3 to 4 inches, plant your tree, and that way the roots grow laterally. And when we dig that up, it's much more conducive to getting it into the bonsai container. And a lot of times you might develop that tree for 15, 20 years in the ground, and you're going to get that a lot faster trunk development and limb development than when you place it in the bonsai container. All that said, native trees are definitely the easiest. As tree healthcare practitioners, we know that native trees have less issues with pests and other diseases. So definitely sticking to native trees is the easiest, because in bonsai you are stressing a tree. So as a beginner, you have less to worry about if you're working with a tree that's used to your heat or your cold temperatures and whatnot. So I would suggest starting with native trees. All right, we'll hit the next slide. All right, what is ramification? So essentially, it's the development of fine limbs by pruning. It also has to do with the soil, but if you see in that picture, you've got the large trunk, then it branches off into a large limb, and then a secondary limb and tertiary limbs. So it's essentially you make one cut, remove that terminal bud, it branches out into 2 limbs. Those 2 limbs in turn, once the bud is cut, turn into 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16. You get the point. So that's how you get that developed crown. As the picture there looks like a mature tree, only on a much smaller scale. So that is ramification. Also, that is in large part to the soil aggregate that is used, which is our next slide. All right, so soil selection. Large aggregate soil is what we're going for in most of our mixes. This ensures a balance of water and oxygen. Given that we don't have the large soil volume, as in, say, a tree planted in the ground, where the water molecules are pulling on each other, creating that vacuum columnar pull of water down to evacuate the oversaturated water in the soil. When we move it to a small container, it's very easy for that water to just sit there. So using these large aggregate soils helps us with that, as well as large drain holes in the pots. Common soil components are pumice, lava, pine bark, diatomaceous earth, which is essentially oil dry. You can find it at Ace Hardware. Make sure you get the all natural stuff. I would say that's lower on the list of high quality soils, but it does work for preliminary development. It's also much cheaper. So, if you're getting into the practice and you have multiple trees, you might start there. And then akadama. And akadama is a clay that's in the bottom of some of these ponds in Japan. It's actually kind of hard to get your hands on. I will show you up close what akadama looks like. Let's see if I can get this. Oh yeah, there we go. So you can see it's a very large, trying to get this with the camera, very large aggregate soil. So essentially what makes akadama so good and the best soil for refinement of bonsai is that these large particles are fractured by the roots, and then they keep breaking and ramification develops in the roots. So it breaks down this soil from the large aggregate, splits it in half. Those 2 become 4, 4 become 8. Essentially the same thing we were looking for with the ramification of the limbs. Also, the more fine roots we develop, the more ramification you get in the crown. So akadama would be definitely the best soil that you can get for refinement. However, I wouldn't start seedlings or small trees like this in akadama. because if you're looking for trunk development and long, thick elongation, you're not going to get that from Akadama because it's scalable and you're going to get fine limbs. So it depends on what stage of development you are with your tree, what soil you choose to go with. All right, we'll do the next one. Next slide. Oh, all good. My bad. All right, so placement of your bonsai. It is a common misconception that bonsais are houseplants. You see Karate Kid, and I've made that mistake before. In fact, a lot of nurseries, as a tactic to sell bonsai to a wider audience who may not, intend on keeping them outside, they will sell them and label them as houseplants. And I have fallen victim to that, and the majority of bonsais do not live inside. They belong outside and generally in full sun. The best environment would be if you had morning to midday sun and then a little bit of shade in the hottest part of the day in the afternoon. It is important to, as you can see in this picture, these are my bonsais displayed, and they're against the building. So the back side of them is not getting sunlight. So it is important to rotate them every couple of weeks. If you have a dense canopy, you might start getting some dieback in the back portion of the tree that's been shaded. There are trees that can be grown inside, even though I just said they don't. But that is a bit more complicated. Some tropicals do well inside, but oftentimes you're going to need grow lights and humidifiers. So it's a little more challenging, but they can be grown inside, only just some tropicals. But definitely trees need a dormant period. They need daylight change. They need humidity. So they are outside. All right, we'll hit the next slide. So resources to learn more. All these I've found on YouTube, and there's many more, but the three that I enjoy the most are the Bonsai Zone. And that one's really great for, I believe he's in Canada. That's a really great resource for beginners. I think he kind of makes bonsai really accessible. And then Heron's Bonsai, he's in the UK. I will say, although I enjoy his stuff, he got me in a little bit of trouble when I first started bonsai because he does some wild stuff. For instance, cutting a tree straight down the trunk and splitting it into two and bending them. And I would like to see how many of the trees actually survive, 3 years later. So I did kill a few trees watching some of his videos, but he has a lot of great content too. I would just say take some of it with a grain of salt. And the one other thing I thought his material lacked is he doesn't talk about the season when he does that work. So maybe a lot of this material is great, but if you do it in the wrong season, you're not going to get good results. But it is a good resource. I might have downplayed it. But my favorite is Bonsai Mirai, and he has free YouTube videos, so I would check him out there first. But he also has Mirai Live, which has a paid membership. I believe there's a couple different levels, but starting at about $17 a month. And it is definitely worth it if you are going to get into the hobby. He has such a comprehensive library of videos, over, I think it's 250 hours with live videos every week where you can ask questions. So I would definitely give him a try, and he is extremely thorough in all the processes, as well as time of year for each type of work on a tree. But you cannot be a local practitioner or club, for sure. Finding somebody local to you that's been doing the hobby for a while is unbeatable, because they're used to working with trees in your climate and times of years, and they've kind of had that trial and error. And I'm lucky enough that there's a gentleman near here who I've learned a lot from in that regard. All right, we are to the final one. So in a second, I'm just gonna awkwardly pick up the camera and show you a few of my trees, and we'll see if this works. We're not really set up for it, but. And then we are going to compose a bonsai. Yes. Which light? Turn that light up.
Sorry, I'm trying to tell him to do a couple things here so we could try to get this a little bit less blurry. Maybe it might be the other one then. I don't know. I think it's the light because it wasn't blurry when we tested this about 5 minutes ago. But when he starts moving the camera around, I think it'll get better. Okay, well, let's keep going. I think it's probably just the fact that it got a little bit darker outside and you're in front of those lights, but it'll be fine. It looks fine, especially when you get up closer. What do you got to show us? Yep.
Composed on a slab. I'll get into some details. We got some ferns and moss in there. These are about 7 years old from seed. Over here is my pride and joy. That tree is about 28 years old. And then Ashley and I just put this together a couple weeks ago. These are Japanese maples, and then we have some tortuosos. And these are rocks that I've carved out. Actually, these used to be curb for the side of a street. So, and then some trident maples and a black pine, also a carved rock. Anyway, all right. Yeah. Can you see it? I'm facing the opposite way as the camera. Yeah, so I just carved that out with a angle grinder and a diamond blade. And obviously stuff like that, well, in all the containers, we'll get into this more, but these are wired in, so that's how that's able to be held in there with wire. And then I get into, which is why that soil doesn't fall out of there, even though it's standing upright. Oh, disconnect. Uh-oh. What? Not sure.
Yeah, you want to use the little gear thing to reset it. Maybe not. Is it not showing up? Okay. So that's our camera, everyone, in case you didn't know. It's just a webcam camera. It's part of our... Hey, there we go. Just trying to vamp over technical difficulties.
Good. All right. Awesome. All right. Now I'm going to move some of this stuff out of here, and we'll get going composing this bonsai. Sorry about that. Bear with me for 1 second. If we have any questions, so
I've got a few questions, but I think you might get to. But how long have you been doing bonsai? Is so how much time are you sinking into this? Is this a wow? Yeah, hold on 1 second. I want to make sure. Say something for me. Oh, this is fun. Say it again. Hmm.
My mic is on. Oh, but nobody else can? Uh-oh. Oh, back in? Okay, we're back in. All right. Okay. So I'm not sure how much you missed of that, so I'll just repeat a little bit of it. I would say I feel that as certified arborists and plant healthcare practitioners, that we are poised to really dive into bonsai and be light years ahead of a lot of people that are learning not only how to grow a tree in a small container. There one or two other questions before we dive in, or is that it?
There we go. Yes, I'm gonna get to TC Mazar's before it goes away here with all these comments because he had a great comment. Hold on, it's way up there. Okay, so TC's asking, loosely speaking, it seems like bonsai can be thought of as an intense microcosm of arboriculture at large. Have you found that to be your experience? What has been the most enlightening point of bonsai that you can apply to the larger context of arboriculture? So I guess
Ooh.
first part would be intense microcosm of arboriculture.
Yeah.
And
So-
what do you think about that?
So first off, TC is way too smart. Love you, TC. But what I would say the biggest thing that I've picked up that I haven't quite figured out how it translates yet is how you can manipulate the roots of trees. Obviously, that's got to be largely different for mature trees because they need in the bonsai container you're wiring them in to hold them in place. But I never really I had no clue about how you could manipulate the roots of a tree and in what season you could do so, and the tree would not be affected. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing I've learned. If that answered the question.
Yeah, yeah, I think that answered the question, and I think we would probably get a little bit more into that. Let's see. You said how old your trees are. Can you just say real quick how long you've been doing this? Because I think that's when it cut out.
Oh yeah.
When your mic cut out.
Okay, yeah. So I've been killing trees for about 5 years. I've been successfully raising trees for going on 2 years.
Gotcha. All right. You talked a little bit about how old your trees are, and where do you usually get them? Now, you talked a little bit about the best places. How old are you getting them when you find them?
Yeah. So some of these trees. I'm trying to think over here. Most of these trees I've gotten from the local bonsai. I wouldn't really call him a nursery. He's a lovely older gentleman. He's been growing bonsai for a long time, but out of his yard. So I'm very lucky that although a lot of these trees aren't highly developed, they are affordable. So these trees right here we're working on are about 9 years, and he planted these from seed. These are bald cypress. These ones over here are about 7 years. Some stuff I've dug up. I have a few that I've gotten at nurseries. So far, I haven't had any from seed that are big enough to do much work on yet. But yeah, all these I've gotten from him as pre-bonsai, so they're not really anything spectacular. But it's perfect because they're affordable, and I can make something that then in turn, has some residual value for sure. And that's another thing I was going to mention. When you go to a bonsai nursery, this is the prime example. This is pre-bonsai material. These trees aren't all that interesting. They can't sell for that much on their own because they're not developed and ramified. We just kind of have some wild growth, but it's great material. And also, I chose this material for this forest because they're not all that interesting on their own, but composed together as a forest, they are all going to be one unit, and that will be pretty unique.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what that turns out to look like. How are you coming up with your compositions of what you're wanting to put together most of the time? So, like, how do you decide what you want the canopy to look like?
Okay, so I mean, a lot of that stuff we're gonna delve more into. I'm gonna start working as we're talking.
Yeah.
But I would say we're going for something. Also, these are coming out really easy because to save some time, I did a little bit of root pruning on these prior.
Can you bring those up and show the roots a little bit closer so we can see what they're looking like? If you can do that without
certainly
getting dirt all over your wife's house. So has that been planted on a tile like you were talking about?
So yeah, this has been planted in these, which he has more patience. As an older gentleman that's been doing this for a while. 7 years, these are, I would say, if you planted these, these are in just grow trays. If you planted these in the ground, you could probably get that development in about 4 years to 5 years. Wow. But he's planted, so you can see, let me try to see over. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can see this root system there's no large roots that go down deep. So that's perfect, because if you have roots that go a lot deeper, you're going to spend years first cutting the roots back a little bit, planting it again. The next season, once you've developed some tertiary roots, cutting the large roots back again, and so on. So it may take multiple years to be able to get the root system down to where you can put it in a container.
Wow.
So that's definitely a benefit of buying trees from a bonsai nursery, is that anything they are growing is going to be in a shallow container.
So talking a little bit about that, Peter Weinberg's just asking about finding things in nature. Do you know if there are people who do any searching around in nature to find material that is ideal qualifications for a bonsai, like grown in rock and things like that? How you determine and how you find those that would be the best?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There is that's a huge part of bonsai. I think that's where bonsai actually originated, is where people would go into the mountains and Japan and find these dwarf trees and bring them back and develop them in containers. So obviously, when you go into the woods, there's the issue of, what's legal to take. So you might think about that, but absolutely, definitely, it's called yamadori, which is digging trees up in the wild, and that's where a lot of the most high quality bonsai come from. And also, you're going to get a really good tree and potentially in a lot shorter time. Because it's already been growing and the trunk thickening in the wild.
Okay.
So I'll show you this here. We have those other ones. I've worked the roots apart, and then I just kind of set them back in there until we work this. But this is when this is a good demonstration. You see, this is one solid root plate. I can hold both trees up just by holding this one. So we're going to have to separate those because all those are together. I can't just put something in here, and we want to design this forest and rearrange them as we wish. Also, this soil they've been growing in is pine bark, a little bit of muck, the natural soil that they were harvested from. And then I think there's turfus or what was it? The oil dry. Diatomaceous earth is what that is composed of. So it's not a great soil for fine development. And in this composition that I'm going to put, and I have a slab we're going to put these on, I'm not looking for rapid growth of the trunk. It would be nice to get them bigger, but I'm pretty happy with the stage of development that these are in. We just want to ramify the limbs a lot more. So I've got a chopstick, and we're just going to tease away some of the soil. And with these, with conifers, we never want to completely bare root. They're very dependent on the microbial, the microbes in the soil, and so bare rooting them, say like a juniper or a pine, is almost certain death sentence if you completely remove all the soil. Whereas a deciduous tree, you can get away with that. In fact, you may desire to do so to completely replace that organic soil with a much better aggregate. But Taxodium distichum being a deciduous conifer, we're going to stick to that idea of not completely bare rooting. So we're just going to leave a little bit of soil and most likely just around right under the trunks there. But we also have to, these roots have quite fused together. I'm sure you can't see from over there, but it's going to be a little bit tricky to separate these because they are not in the final order that I want to set them up. I want to stagger them a good bit more. I guess while I'm working on this, if anyone has any other questions.
I do.
This will take a minute.
Can you or your wife try switching the camera to the laptop camera? Because I don't know.
Can you try switching the camera to the laptop?
The camera you've got right now should be much better. I don't know why it's not.
Can you try switching it to the laptop?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Point it down. Yeah, there we go. And what did you say? Did you say what type of trees these are?
Yeah, a little bit down. Yeah, these are bald cypress, Taxodium distichum.
Okay.
So these are a native tree here that is found. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. Unless she can get the lights on a little bit brighter, that'd be even better.
If you could brighten the lights up, possibly. Sorry, guys. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, so these are bald cypress, which is a native tree found in the swamps here. They do grow outside of the swamps, but they really thrive here in the swamps of South Georgia, Louisiana, Florida.
All right, here's a couple questions. Oh, I'll go over to YouTube for one of these questions. Chris Langston's asking, when is root pruning season?
Perfect question. I was going to get to that. So I will go in close. So now this varies on the tree. In dormancy, definitely for all the deciduous trees. But some like tropicals, we're going to do those in summer, in the middle of summer, which is odd. But I'll take off. Let's see. So if I can get in here close to the camera.
Perfect.
Can you see those green buds?
Mm-hmm.
So right as those buds start to pop, before we get development of the leaves, but right as those buds barely start to pop. And I would have done this about a week ago, but we had to save it. So we have a few leaves developing. Not a big deal as long as we don't get full leaves. But that is the time when the tree goes into dormancy. It's pulling all that energy back into the tree and down into the root system and storing that over the dormant period. When it pushes those buds, it's already pushed those sugars and starches up into the cambium here and up into the shoots and out of the roots. And so now is the prime time to take away a lot of these roots. In summer, terrible time. Definitely in dormancy. The one thing we do want to avoid, which going back to a local practitioner being the best guide, would be here in South Georgia, I have a very limited cold period, and we don't get a lot of freezes. So I can actually do a lot of this work as soon as it cools down, as long as I protect my tree after this root work from say much below freezing. We don't want to get down into the 20s because that's going to really hurt our fine root development and kill those.
Gotcha. That's why I don't see many bonsai up here, I guess.
No. It actually is great there. It's just that only depends on what time of year you would prune the roots. So
Gotcha.
It absolutely can be done there.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be done after we get the cold weather and that passes, which I would say, to paraphrase that, is not a certain time of year. It's when those buds push. And if you get a really cold spell after that, we're going to want to protect the tree from high winds as well as temperatures much below freezing.
That's a really easy way of looking or of determining that. I like that. I've got another one here. Ben Perry asking if using mycorrhizae in the soil is beneficial or a detriment to what you're trying to do.
So that is something I use mycorrhizae inoculants in tree work. That is something I am not really sure about. I'll be honest about inoculating bonsai soils, but I do not think that would cause any harm. Certainly, well, I know a lot of the fertilizers, like the plant saver fertilizer I use. Actually, you know what? I will take that back because I use, or I have used some of the stuff bought from Tree Stuff. That's 474 plant saver that I use on a lot of my air spading operations, and I have used that, and I have had good results. So, but I wasn't doing it exactly for the mycorrhizae.
What's I guess what is the lifetime? How do I want to say this? When you're looking at making a bonsai over 5 years, what's the process looking like? How do you plan out? You know, I'm going to this year, trim the roots. Then this year I'm going to go do things up in the canopy. What's the
Sorry, cut you off there.
No, you're good. I think you got it.
Okay, yeah, that completely depends on what your end goal is with the tree. Are you trying to, because as you get into the bonsai styles, which I briefly showed a picture of at the beginning, and that's just a few styles, and there are so many different growth patterns. So some of my bonsais are 4 inches tall, and they will never get much taller than that, maybe 6 inches, because I'm developing them as shohin, so they will continue to have secondary growth, obviously at a stunted rate, and the trunks will get larger, but they will always be very, very small. Whereas some bonsai, I believe you can't see it here in the picture, but my tallest one is about 3.5 feet. So I don't plan on letting that get a whole lot much taller, but that's I guess it's beating around the bush there, but that completely depends on the style of tree you're going for. But as far as this root work, once you get into a tree into the container you want, I would say about every 3 to 5 years, you'll need to do what I'm doing and replace the soil. The determining factor there would be once water is not percolating down through the soil.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered that.
Yeah. TC Mazar said maintenance schedule is the term I was really trying
Okay.
searching hard to get to. When you are root pruning and repotting, are you limiting the amount of light that your bonsai are exposed to?
Oh, yes. After, I wouldn't say light, but I would say, well, essentially light. But the high intensity sunlight. For about the first week, I'm going to put this into a little bit of shade, of dabbled shade.
Okay. You're kind of easing it back into being in full sun.
But it's important. We don't want to be too shy and leave it in the shade because bald cypress is a sun-loving species. So leaving it too long in the shade after root prune, which is a stressor, could actually have cause more stress.
Okay. Are you going to get into this is wiring trees for anchorage and for canopy shape a little bit later?
Absolutely, yeah. We are. I better get moving on this.
We'll leave that on.
We are just we are getting there. All right, so I'm going to hold off on the questions for a second, and we're going to figure out these roots have grown together. Let me see. I don't know if I can get in here and show you this a little bit. Ashley's cringing as I make a mess.
Yeah, that's good. You're vacuuming tonight.
Yeah, I am. I'm on vacuum duty. Anyway, so we're trying to separate this. We have a few bigger roots fused together. It's going to be a little bit of a chore, but as we separate those, some big primary roots are going to have to be cut. I'm seeing these are fused. When we cut our primary roots, we want to try to keep a secondary, just like you would with pruning a tree, keeping your secondary limb so that it will die back to that point, but the whole entire root won't die back to the base of the tree. Now, it doesn't always die back, but there is that potential. So I'm going to go in here. A lot of the finer roots, I'm not really worried that much about where they're getting cut.
Patrick O'Meara, 2 inches of snow, 2 feet of snow in Denver with lows in the lower teens. Time to bring the bonsai inside. Sounds like that time has passed. If you're going to bring it inside.
That would depend on what kind of trees you have. If your trees,
that's true,
once again, we go to native trees. And even trees that might not be native exactly to your area. Like, for instance, we'll say Juniperus procumbens. They can be down and well below freezing and buried under snow for months at a time. It is important to take them off of a shelf and put them down maybe next to the house where they have some shelter from the wind and in contact with the soil so they don't get quite as cold. Even snow covering them offers insulation.
So you're
all right, so I got them. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Go. Sorry. No, go for it. Oh, and while you're doing this, can you tell us what you're using for pruning?
Yeah. So you actually can do this with just regular tree pruning shears. These are nicer. This is just a kit. You know, you've got your pruning shears for the limbs, root pruners, knob cutters, concave. These are more for the concave cutters. And knob cutters are more for the canopy pruning of big limbs. But it's not, when you're starting out, you definitely don't need those tools. But I will tell you, when you do get your bonsai set, spend the money, stay with the cheap pruners until you have the money to buy a decent kit. Because I've bought the cheaper ones and they're worthless.
Gotcha. So never, not using silky saws.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say you're fine with just a pair of Felcos until you can actually afford a good kit.
Got it. Perfect. All right, I cut you off on what you were going to say next.
I was just saying I've separated them a bit. I'm just going to work this root system down a little bit, so we can get them. As we're working this, it's important when you buy kits. Some kits have, I don't have one right here, but they have it looks like it's like a hard rake, and people use that for this root work. The chopstick is really important, and the grip I have is also important. We're just kind of loosely holding this there, and we're pulling the roots out. So we're not trying to. The rake just kind of breaks the roots away. This chopstick with a little flex in my hand is a lot easier. So if I catch a big root, I'm not just ripping it. I have that flex that it just pops over it. So we're not destroying all these roots. We're just raking them out laterally instead of being kind of a tangled rat's nest there. What time are we at? All right. While I finish this up, we have any more questions?
Oh, I got lots of questions. The one that they're really asking right now, which I wasn't going to ask, but it's getting a lot here. Any species that you recommend to develop in desert climate?
Oh yeah,
that wasn't the one that I was talking about, but I'm just gonna let these guys ponder the question that they want to know.
Not being from a desert climate, I'm sure there's a lot that I won't mention, but definitely tropicals. Dwarf jade is a great option. They are also incredibly easy. You can literally take a cutting of any size, the size of your wrist, and put it in good soil, and you'll have roots. But they do great. They don't like a lot of water at all, and they're fast growers too. But yeah, I would say tropicals and dwarf jade, which is a tropical.
Dwarf jade. All right. Well, I might look that one up.
All right.
If it's difficult to kill, we just need some of those around here with myself and my wife.
And they grow great indoors too, actually.
Perfect. Chris, Linda, can we do this with almost any tree? What's the idea of that?
Yeah. So I think you can do with about any tree. Some trees are much pickier about messing with their roots. It can be done with just about any tree. As I mentioned kind of in the beginning, it would make sense to avoid trees with rather large leaves because kind of the point is that as we dwarf these trees, their leaves come down to scale. So obviously, if you have a tree with really large leaves, it's never going to be that impressive.
Sorry, I did something weird there with my screen. It'll be gone in a second. People they're gonna freak out. So what Sean Welch is trying to figure out is if you ever do bonsai in the nude.
I have been known to do that. I will tell you, you don't want to slip with your scissors.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I guess now would be a good time. Now that you're getting your, I guess we'll call that a container. We've had a lot of people asking about how you are choosing your containers, how you're anchoring things in to your containers, etc.
Yeah, so we're getting to all that here in a minute.
Perfect.
I'm just trying to. So okay, I'll show you. We'll start there before I cover it up. So here I have a slab. Before the webinar, I've drilled a bunch of holes in here. Now with the slab planning, we're not looking for drainage holes, unlike a bonsai container, which a container this big would have 2 or 3 3/4 inch holes for a lot of drainage. But on a slab, obviously it just rolls off the side. So I've only drilled these holes and put, you might not be able to see this here, but I've got wire coming up through there.
Yeah, we
so
can
that's what's going to fasten these. So it's going to fasten these two here. So another thing, when we're, so back to selection. I got this slab because it was free off a job. But when you get into, don't be discouraged when you look at the Bonsai Mirai videos, because he often has, he'll have a slab that costs, $2,000, and he's planting 5 trees in it that are upwards of $500 each. So wow. You can go up there a lot. All right, so as we set this up with forest, we are going to, we generally want to do a odd number of trees. If you do 2 trees, that's fine. There's a lot of compositions that look great with 2 trees. And then after you get to about, let's say, 10 trees or more, oftentimes it's too many to subconsciously count in your mind, so it's not going to draw your attention. But say you have this planting here and we put 4 trees on it, your eye is always going to get drawn to the fact that there's an equal number of trees, and it's going to take away from the composition. So I think I'm going to do 5 trees in this one, if I can fit them all on here. So in a forest, and this forest is completely different than the bald cypress forest I showed you in the beginning. But with the forest planting, you're looking for, oftentimes people have a spot that you enjoy, and you might take a picture and try to replicate that, which is kind of what I've done with the first one, with the swamp that's near here. But the general idea is we have 1 to 2 primary trees, which is how forests are often developed. You've got primary tree, and then that tree has seeded out, and over time you have a lot of understory trees. So I think, let's see. So it's really important to develop where you want to put these primary trees into this composition, and then we'll fill in the other trees around those. So I'm going to play with this a little bit. If anyone has a question, I'll try to get that while I'm figuring this out.
Yeah, Karen Nunn asking if you have any of the small Japanese-style trees.
Japanese style, define that.
Yeah.
Japanese maples, maybe?
Possibly. I would say check out his Instagram.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Here, I'll put it in the comments here.
How do you like that?
All right. Yeah, check that out, and you can see what he's got. As he was saying a little bit earlier, like, go for the trees native to you. So.
But yeah, if you're talking about shohin trees, which is the small bonsai, and they're generally under, I think it's about 12 inches tall. Yes, I do have some of those, and I really enjoy those.
Cool. Yeah, I think we can grow Japanese maple out here in central Indiana, outside, no problem. So we could probably get one of those going in my front yard, maybe. John. Southern. Okay, he's got a big long last name. Why is seed growth harder and longer than buying nursery bought? Aside from just the idea of, it's older when you get it.
What was it? Why is growing from seed harder?
Yeah.
Well, as my local mentor would say, you either have money or you have time. So, if you're growing from seed, that's actually great. I mean, the nice thing there is if you decide you want to do any movement in the trunk, which a lot of styles would lend to that, bald cypress have very straight trunks in nature, so you wouldn't do that. But growing from seed, you can put wire and bend the trunks any way you wish. So there is that advantage. However, you got to have a lot of time.
It takes much longer, but you have more customization, I guess, of it.
All right, so real quick before you go into that. So I've decided I want these trees in this position. So I'm just going to do some marks here with chalk so that I get them right back in there. And also when I pull them out, I know where to place my wires. All right, go ahead with the questions.
Do you use water washing to minimize desiccation of the roots when repotting?
Yes, you can. The problem with washing with water is that oftentimes you're going to wash away a lot of the soil, which, as I mentioned, we want to. Sorry, focus in for 1 second. We do not want to bare root these trees. But thanks for the reminder, because I have a spray bottle and I will keep those moist. So thank you. But I'm not that worried about that. It's not that hot, and we're indoors.
So how many wires are you using per tree here?
So that actually depends. The bigger ones, I'm going to use. I think we're going to use 2 wires on those because I want to make sure to hold them in. Obviously, as we saw when I pulled those out of the first container, that they've been in a while. After an extended period of time, the roots fuse together, and you only need about 1 wire to hold the whole composition in. The next repot, these would all come out as 1 unit, and when we redo the soil, the roots would still stay intact. No reason to cut them apart unless we're trying to change the style. So I would say as many wires as you feel that you need to hold it in place, because when we get movement, you get death of the roots. They need to be held in place so that those roots can develop. If that answered.
Yeah. The type of wire that you're using, just regular.
Oh, okay, yeah. So Bonsai, I'm actually here using galvanized wire, and the reason being is these trees are rather tall. Generally, would use aluminum bonsai wire, which is easier to work with, but as you'll see when we go to crank them down, when you twist the wire, it can break rather easily. So with these trees, we're really going to have to hold them down because they're in such a limited amount of soil, and they're rather tall. So I'm using this galvanized wire because we can get a little bit more purchase on that and hold them better.
I've got another one here. Oh, this was a good question. You mentioned that you killed a lot of trees when you started. What was the main reason you think that happened?
Yeah, as I mentioned with Heron's Bonsai, I watched his videos. I was very empowered. I was like, I'm a tree guy. I got this. I know about how to raise trees. I have access to trees, and I got a bunch of trees, and I was so eager to get started. And I reduced the root systems in the wrong season. And that was one thing why I mentioned with his videos is he shows a lot of great work, but there's not a lot of emphasis on what time of year we want to do the work.
Okay.
So that was the killer. However, I do like it because I also learned stuff that a lot of practitioners that would be doing this for years would tell you would never work. I actually learned would work, but you don't want to try it again because you got lucky.
Alex Baxt asking about your composition when you put those. You had the trunks kind of bowing away from each other. and asking if you can kind of talk about how you came to that compositional choice.
Yeah. So I haven't firmly set where exactly they're going to go. I'm going to have a little bit more maneuvering of them before we set them in the final place, because we don't want to create anything too unique. So I'll take note of that when I go to put them back in.
Now I
But
haven't.
I did not intentionally.
Yeah. Okay.
Essentially.
I
I will
haven't.
say with oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Whatever you're saying is more important.
With this process, generally the best idea would be to set your tree in place, then drill your hole or mark it with chalk, then drill your hole, because the closer your wire is to the root plate, the better purchase you're going to get. I didn't have that luxury because I had to get these set up ahead of time, because it took me, with a tile bit, it took me about 30 minutes to drill all these holes.
So when you are going to be putting these wires on, are you putting them around individual roots? What's the strategy for that?
Yeah, anywhere across the root plate that holds the tree firmly in place, essentially.
Gotcha. And what's the girdling risk there?
Minimal. I mean, you're going to get some girdling, but they'll grow around it. Also, these are only going to be in place for about 2 to 3 years. After that, we're going to cut them, and it'll be about time to possibly repot. If not, we'll just cut the wires, and we'll stick with just one wire on each side, holding it into place much more loosely.
Okay. All right. Jason asking if we'll be selling bonsai tools and wire. I can make a note of that and bring it up. Unfortunately, I think you think I have more power than I do. And so we'll see. We might have all the stuff, and I could probably put together a kit. Ashley's saying that she's going to post. She's going to have you post some of your smaller trees to your Instagram.
Yeah, I believe there's some on there.
Okay. Let's see what we got else up here. Fall colors of bonsais, and if are there any bonsai that you have that are just indoors?
So I have trees that would grow well indoors, such as some tropical trees, but I have never tried to grow them indoors. I have a greenhouse that I use. So that's what I'm doing for over the winter time.
That's handy. How long was it since you last watered before beginning your transplant process?
So these I actually skipped. Let's see. Generally, about this time of the year, we're having temps in 70s to 80s. So as needed, I would say I water about twice a day. Sometimes some plants get skipped because we're not doing it on a schedule, only as needed. I did skip the watering on these so it wouldn't be mucky, especially considering they're in highly organic soil, which we're trying to get rid of. All right, excuse me, blocking the camera. All right. Sorry, this process takes a minute, and then we'll be rolling. Get back here and look.
So if you were to put, how much freedom do you have of changing the shape of the trunk when they're 7 years old? How much?
Limited. There are riskier measures you can take with cutting and actually bending the trunk. I have not delved in that far into my practice, but yes, you can actually cut and bend the trunks of of larger trees.
So this is a pretty important way of doing it, or a pretty important step.
Yeah, so this is going to set my whole composition. So I'm getting a little bit meticulous with how these two are set. And I appreciate whoever brought up about that trunk. I repositioned it where it doesn't quite bend out as much. All right, I think I'm happy with it. So from here, I'm going to start adding some soil. Measuring cup. A cup, please. Thank you. 1 second here. I forgot to grab one thing. So here I'm using a finer aggregate Akadama. I think this is the medium blend. The particle size, 1 second. The particle size are, I want to say, an 1/8 to 1/4 inch. And when I drilled my holes, I made sure that those holes were smaller than that so that they do not fall out the hole. So we're trying to get just about maybe a 1/2 inch of a layer under these roots. I'm going to mound this up, and we're going to set our tree on there and just kind of wiggle it to spread that out. Get a little bit more under there. Obviously,
yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
Where do you get your Akadama?
So this, it was actually rather hard to find recently after COVID. But I got this on Amazon. No, actually, I take that back. I got this on eBay. I had the larger aggregate on Amazon, I believe.
Oh, that's handy.
All right, so I've kind of put my wire under the main root system here so that I'm not girdling that large root. Just kind of tucked it under there. Also, we want to keep these as hidden as possible just for aesthetics.
There's one of your smaller ones. Whoever was Karen Nunn. I've got your Instagram up here, and I'm putting some things up on the screen for it. And that one looks like it's. Did you put that into some volcanic rock, or what's? I don't know if you can see that one pretty well.
I'm not seeing the picture. That. Okay, yeah, that is actually those are procumbens, junipers, and lava rock.
That's pretty neat. And so you just hollow out an area in there for.
Yeah, I just took a drill bit and kind of ground that out and added those in there.
That's fun.
So now that I've gotten here, I've connected my wires, and I'm just going to take some pliers and spin this until we get nice and taut. As I mentioned, this is really important that we don't want a lot of movement once this composition is final, because when those small roots develop, we're going to be killing them as if this wiggles around too much. All right, got that one in there. You can see it's fairly stable if the root system's not moving a whole lot.
All right, is this the one that you were talking about here? You had some pavers or something?
Yeah, I can actually.
That you're using?
Yeah, that's. I've actually, I'll show you since then. I've added. I've got it right here in front of me. Yeah, this was a piece of curb, and I hauled out. And now I've since added moss to the back. Hasn't quite covered in, but it's a fun little piece.
It's a great idea. Sorry if I keep interrupting, you'll never get
Yeah, we won't.
anything made. I'll
And
just
now
keep
I'm
popping some little pictures up here while you're
pushing the
doing
cloth.
this. Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is another reason why this is nice to use the galvanized wire is the aluminum bonsai wire. When you start trying to thread it through the root system, it's not stiff enough to really go through easily.
That's a fun one. And a piece of marble or travertine or something like that.
Yeah, that's actually another piece of that. I ended up with a whole lot of that granite from curbs.
So when you do this, when you put that rock in there, you're doing that on your first transplant. When are you training those roots to go down like that?
Yeah, right at this part in the process would be when I would do that. And I've just kind of taken away the soil that was there. I put that rock, and then down below the soil, I fasten the roots to the rock with a wire.
Yeah, I can see here we've got. Let me get this a little bit bigger up on the screen. I can kind of show.
Oh, I definitely missed a part in this process.
There's that wire, I guess, holding that root down and holding it to another one, maybe?
Yeah. And I got talking and I missed the process.
Uh-oh.
Didn't put any soil under this. So. Bear with me 1 second. I knew it was going to be a little bit of a time crunch to fit all this into 2 hours.
John C. Olay, how often do you have to deal with pests and diseases?
As they arise, but obviously if we're keeping healthy trees, we shouldn't have to deal with a lot. So far, I haven't dealt with much more than aphids. It's been the most of my worries so far, but nothing major.
Is it mostly the constant attention that they're getting? I guess.
Yeah, I think it's I definitely, because I'm there, unlike a tree in the field, there every day. So a lot of small issues such as caterpillars or what you notice before they've done any damage.
Mm-hmm. We're about 7:30. If you want to, if you think we can do it, keep on going on this, or maybe switch and just show how working with the canopy works a little bit.
Yeah. So actually, with this setup, and I will switch to that if you want. I didn't plan, even if I had plenty of time, I wasn't going to do a lot with the canopy on this.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some portions that are in the questionnaire at the end that I have not gotten to yet.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, probably need to cover that.
Yeah, so we'll get to that. And then I've given you great resources to find out about wiring the limbs. We don't have a whole lot of limbs. And a lot of this, honestly, I wouldn't actually use wire. I would clip to train. But that's definitely a good topic because that has a lot to do with bonsai.
So when when you're clipping to train them, what oh, here's your tiny bonsai again. When you're clipping to train, what season are you doing that in?
So that like these, I would. It's actually great. Great question. So when we're talking about ramification, when these limbs, when we get new shoots, so these little leaves are going to create a shoot with bald cypress, and the same is for Dawn redwood. Once that new shoot um, turns red, which would be the development of phloem, then if we prune again, and we don't need to hit a node, if we prune anywhere on that limb, and that depends on how much elongated we want that portion, then we're going to get another flush of growth in the same season. So as soon as this recovers and we push out a lot of new growth and these new shoots turn red, I'm going to partially defoliate, which would be all the ones that have turned red. I'm going to clip back about halfway, or even just a little bit, depending on where they are here, and how much elongation I want. And in the southeast, where we have a long growing period, I can get 2 to 3 flushes, probably 3 flushes in a year. So I'm going to get a lot of ramification in one season by pruning 3 times, actually. However, if you do prune and they haven't turned red yet, you're going to lose all that when the tree goes dormant.
Okay. So then, with wiring things up and training it that way, I guess that's what most people are, if you say bonsai, are thinking of, is kind of what you've got going on with this one.
Yeah.
So where you is there anything to do with the seasons for when you're doing this, or when you're starting that?
The pruning?
Yeah, well, not the pruning, but I guess the shaping with wire. We've got a lot of people interested in that.
Oh yeah. So generally, that's going to be done when they're dormant, so that you're not, knocking buds or leaves off. It's easiest. And then depending on the species of tree would determine when we would remove that. And it might be like like with these limbs, smaller limbs should hold form from wire within about 2 months. We could remove that wire, and the limb would hold that position. So a lot of like pines or junipers, it's going to take about 18 months before they hold. I'm going to get one side developed because I have to get to one point in my webinar. So what are we thinking about this so far? Does anyone have any things they think I should change?
We'll see in a second.
What do you think? Should I change one of these trees over here? Are we feeling this is empty over here? Is there nothing left there? No, this is what we're doing.
Is that small one in front? There's kind of one that's at an angle there. Yeah, is that one?
Yep. I'm just going to... What's that? Ashley, my wife says she likes that. She never leads me wrong.
Then you got to go with it.
Yep. So yeah, also when we're going for a forest, you want differing sized trunks and differing spaces. We don't want to make it uniform at all, or that's going to really draw your eye in. Sorry, my back's to you for a second.
Here, I'll cover your backside up with one of your Instagram pictures, some of your forests. Got Jason Chalo saying that you need a G.I. Joe climbing the bonsai.
That would be cool.
We sold those once. We had like climber G.I. Joes that we sold a long time ago, probably 5 or 6 years. Oh, Oh, I do have two questions here. If you've got a second.
Yeah.
One will just be me saying words because I don't quite understand what they mean. Is it possible to use a scion from a parent tree with root hormones and make a bonsai? Will it grow dwarfed or grow normal leaf size?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually something I didn't cover in the beginning there, but absolutely, that's another great option for for gaining material. In fact, a lot of the guy that it's kind of like my local mentor creates a lot of his stuff from cuttings. But no, they do not. The trait of being dwarfed does not translate to the cutting.
Okay, so it's still your full sized
Yeah.
tree when you put it in. You have to go with that. Gotcha. And then the other question that I got a while ago, I don't know, I didn't write down who asked it, but do you ever drill holes into trunks to fill it with a sacrificial branch? Something like that. Let me see if I can find this original. Unless you know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I do know what they're talking. I have not done that. You're getting much past beginner bonsai, but no, you can absolutely do that, and in fact, you can do the same when you're developing the root flare. You can graft scions into the roots to create a root flare and a root plate.
Okay.
How much longer do we have left?
I think I understand what you're saying there.
Would it be problematic if we just kind of went on through and people ask questions as we go, or should we take a definite break for people to ask questions?
We can keep going. I can ask questions as we go if you want. I'm gonna pull up the quiz here and make sure that we've answered everything.
This?
I like that better.
Okay. The wife has spoken.
Can't really see it. I like that.
So another thing, I'll just mention it now in case we get pressed for time. But if you look at some of my pictures, you'll notice a lot of stuff has moss on it.
Yes.
On the soil. So moss is great. It's kind of a misconception. A lot of people consider moss as injuring the tree in some way, and it can. However, moss is also a wonderful thing on your trees. It filters, for one, it looks amazing, and it gives that aesthetic of a forest or a tree. But also it filters some of the harsh water out, kind of that first layer before it gets down to the soil. It promotes root growth on the top because we have such a limited amount of soil here that obviously the roots are going to grow where it's most desirable, which is deeper in the pot, because it's not getting up the first half inch of the soil there is getting wet and then it's getting dry. It's kind of not conducive as the environment's constantly changing. So moss helps us kind of even that situation out.
Okay. And where are you getting this moss?
Yeah, so that's another good question. Is some of my stuff I put moss on, but I'm not covering the entire soil because if your moss has a lot of dirt on the bottom, that can be an issue. The best option would be to collect moss, that is grown in full sun first off, because our trees are going to be in full sun. If you get moss that's acclimated to the shade, it's simply going to die when you put it in full sun on your trees. Also, the best solution for moss on your trees would be to collect it on aggregate surfaces, such as rocks or brick walls, even on concrete, and then you can take that moss and mix it with, we'll grind it up a little bit, put it through a sifter, and mix it with sphagnum moss, which you can buy at the store. Then we'll take that mixture and just kind of put it on the trees, spread it across. That does take a lot longer to develop. It takes about 6 months to a year to fully grow in there, but you're going to get a lot better percolation of water through that. All right, I'm going to show you one other cool thing here. Find some other wire. With bald cypress, they're obviously notorious for their cypress knees. And generally, cypress knees are developed from being submerged in water for a period of the year. You probably can't see this, but there's already some cypress knees developed on this. And these knees are developed simply, we're just going to take a root, just a regular root here, pull it out of the soil, and I'm going to crimp it with this wire in half, not breaking it. I'm going to crimp it and hold it up out of the soil. Now, over a period of a couple of years, that's going to fuse together, and we're going to have a cypress knee. Pretty cool, huh?
That's pretty neat.
Hmm?
And I guess that's something you could do on pretty much any species of tree to add
No.
get some knobbiness to it. No.
No. Bald cypress are prone to that growth, so they're going to take to it rather easily.
Okay.
All right, so we've got this far. Just so I don't run out of time, I'm going to go to another step of this process, and I'll come back to. I've got everything fastened, but this far tree. But I want to make sure I have time to cover all this. So what I've got here is mucko, and it is a mixture of, I believe it's clay, and it's also got some of this ground akadama, and a few other organic materials. There's other options you can use to build these walls. Because where we're at now is if I leave it as is and I put the rest of the soil, all that soil is going to wash away first rain. So this stuff, we're going to build walls and create a pot out of this. And this stuff is pretty cool. It actually, we're going to avoid heavy watering for about 3 to 4 days after I put this on. But after that, it's going to hold its position and not wash away.
So it's sort of like a clay
glue
or like plaster that you're putting up there?
But it's all organic soil. It's just a mixture. But yeah, it does have some clay. I've also used just potter's clay and mixed in some soil with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually works if you're going a little bit more on a budget. This stuff's not. I think it's about $35-$40 for 10 pounds of this stuff. So you can save a little bit of money by doing potter's clay. But the problem with that is you're going to get more cracking as it gets wet and dry. Goes back and forth. So this stuff, you really can't beat this stuff.
So that's
but we don't want to use this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's how you've kept this, your vertical tree coming out that way.
Correct.
It's pretty cool. But it's called mucko?
Yes.
And you get it at Amazon, I assume?
So you can get that at Amazon pretty much. I think Superfly Bonsai is where I have found it regularly.
Superfly Bonsai.
A lot of places don't carry it. You can also find recipes to make your own, but I've found the ingredients I can only buy in bulk, and I'm just not there yet.
Perfect.
So I'm just kind of wetting it down because when I opened it and used it for another composition is dried up just a little bit, so a little bit of moisture back into it. We don't want to use this as too much as soil. We want to make sure you're just using it as the wall, because it does not. It's a little bit more anaerobic, so your root development isn't going to be as strong in the areas where we're using this.
Did you talk about thickening the trunks of trees?
Yeah. So
Can't read.
yeah, if you want to develop, say you wanted to take this tree and develop it into a more robust trunk, and more branching lower, the best way to go about that would be in the ground, planted over tile. It's going to grow at a much faster rate. Another option would be a grow box or a really large pot while still shallow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're going to get, once you put it into the small container, we're really ramping back the growth rate, especially of the trunk.
Gotcha.
However, the more ramified growth we have, and I explained what ramification was, the more fine limbs, the more sugars and starches are coming through this trunk. So also, the more we're going to get growth. But it's still going to be slower than what you would get in the ground. All right, I've about got my wall built up on this side to where I can start filling it in.
Here we've got some images of Ashley doing pretty much what you did, but in a small pot, it looks like. And there, so if you've got a pot with a lip like this, are you still putting mucko on it?
No, so this is simply for slab planting,
Just for
or
slabs?
an inverted planting when the soil would wash away. All right, so for now we're going to come back. I've got my base layer about a 1/2 inch under all these trees. Actually, I need to build
about a 1/2 inch of that the akadama, right?
Yes, underneath. One more little bit here. All right, so gonna mound this up. So I put a little extra in there, if I can find my chopstick. And then, just like when we're planting a tree in the field, I'm going to use this chopstick and work this all down in between the root system, because we took a lot of that organic dirt and soil that was around it before. So we're really going to work these down. Another cool thing is if you have any of these roots, if you have 1 or 2 roots sticking up, no worries, we can cut those off after. If you have a nice primary root that's not sticking up, we can just take a piece of wire, bend it into a little hook, and staple that down into the soil.
Got a couple questions here.
Right.
When you're watering, especially on a slab, are you watering out of a can? Are you watering with just a spray bottle? What's the technique for that?
I mean, I water with a hose. You could water with a can. We don't want, like, obviously a high-powered direct stream of water.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually, once this settles in here, it stays in here really well. Especially once we were to add that layer of moss to the top. really going to hold everything intact. But no, there's not a whole lot of soil washing away. But yeah, I would say a mist is the best, and we want to really make sure we get an even layer. That's the awesome thing here is we don't have to worry about overwatering each time you water because it's just going to run out. The only time you're going to get overwatering is watering too frequently.
On that, do you feed these, and how often do you do that? I know you mentioned earlier about it.
Yeah, so that as far as fertilizer, that completely depends on what we're trying to go for, whether you're going for refinement or elongation. So yeah, during the growing season, I feed these about, for the trees I'm really trying to grow and thicken up, about every 4 weeks. The ones in refinement get about every 6 weeks, and they're also getting a lower dose.
What's when you're working on these, when do you know when to stop for what you're doing with the day?
As far as like how much work I can do at once, or what was the question?
Like what are your goals? How much work can you do at once?
That would depend on the health of the tree. Obviously, we don't want to be doing any of this to a tree that's unhealthy. But I would say if you're doing it in the prime time, which is right now, you could get away with removing, if you know what you're doing and you're not just ripping roots, you could get away with removing about 60 to 75% of the roots at one go.
Oh, wow.
Which is quite impressive.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on BioGold? Whatever that is. I don't know if we sell that, so I'm not familiar with it.
I won't comment because I don't know what that is. Sorry.
Totally legitimate answer. Also, I don't know if anyone can hear it. I'm gonna apologize. My son's getting a bath. It's his bedtime back there, and I'm right next to the bathroom. So if you can hear a baby yelling and talking, that's him. That's what's going on.
So here I've got some dwarf ornamental grass. I think it's yellow pepper grass, I believe it's called. This also grows in a swamp. So it's kind of the perfect little, I like to kind of garnish my, I guess you could say, my little plantings, which actually would be more in touch with pingjing, which is a Japanese variation of bonsai, which is often includes large clumps of moss. Let's see, even little like miniature houses, fences. It's more of a landscape design than just focused on the trees. So I kind of am pulling a little bit from that, adding a few of these plants in there.
Interesting.
But to me, they make a really good aesthetic, especially since this grass also grows in the same environment as these trees. So it's kind of a native landscape, so to speak.
That's kind of a question that I had. How I guess traditional do you get with bonsai? Where are there traditional rules that you're supposed to do it this way, supposed to not do it this way? I know Japanese culture has a lot of tradition like that.
Yeah. There is, I mean, obviously bonsai originated in Japan. There's a lot of bonsai that's not traditional to Japan, and I think I'm not on the level to where I would say I follow or don't follow rules. I'm simply not producing that quality of stuff yet, but I think I just do what makes me happy, and you follow some rules, and then I just kind of have fun with it.
Makes sense.
Because that's what it's about for me. I'm not trying to sell these trees. I'm trying to sit in my backyard and sip on an IPA and enjoy these.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, they are working just fine for that.
Are there like bonsai competitions or something like that? I don't know if there's a 4-H.
Yeah, there is. I don't know a whole lot about that, but absolutely there is trees that are entered, and those for sure.
Cool. Well, I am expecting most of these people to have bonsai trees by the end of next week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Hey, maybe that might be a photo contest on one of our giveaway streams
There you go.
sometime soon. Take a picture with your bonsai.
I got a head start, guys. Watch out. I guess we're close to wrapping up. Does anyone have any follow-up questions?
I think we're pretty much run out of questions, and they're just getting into thirsty comments. I think you hit a lot here. Some really great information, some really great stuff. Oh, niche madement. I'm not sure.
Oh, Nick.
Nick madement. Yeah, see, that's why you're the thirsty one I was talking about. Is there a way Shem can undo another button on his shirt while he works? Calm down there. We're here for trees, people.
Yeah.
Okay.
If my hands weren't dirty, I would oblige you.
Is there anything that that you'd like to end on?
Yeah,
with your experience about bonsai.
Along the lines of what we just talked about, there are rules, and especially if you join, it cracks me up because I'm on all these tree pages, and people can be so critical, as we all know. And I found that in a lot of these bonsai forums that I'm on. But at the end of the day, learn some of the rules and basic guidelines, such as what I mentioned, like different size trunks, different spacings, odd number of trees for a forest. So loosely follow the guidelines, but at the end of the day, just if you're in it like I am, do what makes you happy and have fun with it. And make sure to invite your friends over so they can gawk at your trees.
I like it. One last question, I think. Peter Scranton, how much do you have to invest to have a bonsai forest like that?
Oh, yeah. So one of the ones I showed earlier, those were $2 seedlings that I put into that, and I found that rock. I bought a thing of diatomaceous earth for $10. I think in that piece I might have $20 invested. Something like this, I think I paid. It depends on where you're at, but roughly $100 in the trees, which to me was worth it. That's 7 years of my life I didn't have to invest into those.
Mm-hmm.
And then the soil. But yeah, if you're making them from, I will tell you, I can compose this for about, we'll just guesstimate $250. I could easily turn around and sell that after 1 year of refinement for upwards of $1,000. No problem.
Wow.
So the older these trees get, the more value they're going to accrue if you're developing them. So I think it's a great investment, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. It's a great hobby. Thank you for doing this webinar, Shem. I'm gonna ask that when you're done with that, you send me some pictures that we can post
Absolutely.
all over the
Yeah.
place. And Ash said in here that you guys might look into giving us a list of doing materials that you use, which I think would be really nice to have.
Yeah.
If you send that to me, I can get that around. So thank you for doing that, everyone. I posted the link to the Google quiz at the bottom here in all the comment sections. If you take that within the next hour, you can get 2 free CEUs. After that, this video is going to live forever on the internet, on our YouTube page
Oh, no.
and Facebook. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if I told you that beforehand, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
this is immortalized. And you can take that quiz anytime and get 1 CEU for it. One more question. Last one. Very last one. I've said this many times.
Yes.
Do you name your bonsai?
So I actually did name my bonsais. Ashley and I came up with some very creative. We have we're kind of those people, we name everything. But once I got too many, I couldn't remember the names. But I'll tell you a few names because I find them quite humorous. We have Mr. Miyagi Acer Ventura, Bonsai. What was it? Bonsai Jovi.
Oh, yeah. Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman. So yeah, they kind of go like that. I crack myself up. But yeah, I got too many and I couldn't name them all.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for doing this once again, and have a nice night. And thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a good one.